The morning sun rose over New Geneva's wheat fields like it had for the past 50 years. Children ran through the golden crops while their parents worked the land. This human colony sat far from the busy trade routes, growing food for the inner worlds. Life here was simple and peaceful. Governor Sarah Chen stood on her office balcony, watching the farmers begin their daily work. She had ruled this world for 10 years. The people trusted her. The crops grew well. Everyone had enough to eat. It was exactly the kind of place humans loved to build their new homes. The first sign of trouble came from the orbital sensors. 3 massive ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. They were bigger than anything the colonists had ever seen. Black metal hulls stretched for miles. Weapons that could destroy planets hung from their sides like deadly ornaments. "Governor," her aide Marcus ran into the room, "the sensors show Imperial ships, a whole fleet." Sarah's blood turned cold. The Galactic Empire rarely visited human colonies. When they did, bad things usually happened. She had heard stories from other worlds, ships that never returned, colonies that went silent, people who simply disappeared. "Send them our standard greeting," Sarah ordered. "Tell them New Geneva welcomes peaceful visitors." The reply came within minutes. It was not peaceful. "Human colony New Geneva," the voice was cold and mechanical. "This is Admiral Zexkar of the Imperial Third Fleet. You will prepare for immediate inspection. Any resistance will be met with total destruction." Sarah knew what an Imperial inspection meant. They would take whatever they wanted: food, supplies, people. Some colonies never recovered, but she had to try to protect her people. The Imperial ships entered orbit like hungry predators. Smaller craft launched from the huge vessels. They landed near the capital city with enough force to crack the ground. Armored soldiers poured out. Each one stood 8 feet tall in their battle suits. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Admiral Zexkar stepped onto New Geneva soil. He was a Vorthak, one of the Empire's warrior species. His 4 arms moved like mechanical joints. His eyes glowed red behind his helmet. When he spoke, his voice made the ground shake. "Governor Chen," Zexkar's words came out like grinding metal, "Emperor Thaxon has decided your world will provide additional resources for the Empire. We require your entire grain harvest. Every ton of food you have grown this year." Sarah's heart sank. The harvest was meant to feed her people through the long winter. Without it, thousands would starve. She had to find another way. "Admiral, we need that food to survive." Sarah stepped forward. "We can give you half the harvest. That would still feed the Empire and keep our people alive." Zexkar's laugh was like breaking glass. "Humans do not negotiate with the Empire. You will give us everything, or you will give us nothing at all." "I cannot let my people starve," Sarah said firmly. "Take half. That is my final offer." The alien admiral stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to his soldiers and spoke in their harsh language. The soldiers raised their weapons. "You have chosen nothing at all," Zexkar announced. What happened next would be remembered across the galaxy. The Imperial soldiers moved through New Geneva like a plague. They gathered every human they could find. Men, women, children, elderly people who could barely walk. The soldiers forced them all into the main square, 95,000 people, nearly the entire colony. Sarah was brought before the crowd. Zexkar stood beside her on a platform where everyone could see. "People of New Geneva," the Admiral's voice echoed across the square. "Your governor has chosen defiance. The Empire does not tolerate defiance. Today you will learn the price of human stubbornness." Sarah screamed for them to stop. She begged them to take her instead. She offered them anything they wanted. But the Imperial soldiers had their orders. The executions began at noon and continued until sunset. Energy weapons that killed instantly. No torture, no suffering. Just quick, efficient death. The Empire wanted to send a message. not waste time. Admiral Zexkar made sure everything was recorded, high-quality video from every angle. The images would be broadcast across the galaxy as a warning. This is what happens when humans refuse to obey. Sarah Chen was among the last to die. Before the end, she managed to send one final message through the colony's quantum communication system. A message that would reach every human world in the galaxy within hours. "They killed us all." Her last words traveled across space. 95,000 people dead because we wanted to keep enough food to live. Remember us. Remember what they did here. The Imperial fleet left New Geneva as quickly as it had arrived. They took nothing with them except the recordings of their massacre. The wheat fields burned in their wake. The empty colony became a monument to Imperial power. But something had changed in the galaxy that day. On Earth, deep in the military command centers, old alarms began to ring. Alarms that had been silent for 300 years. Admiral Chen Wei sat in the Terran Defense Council's emergency meeting room. She was Sarah Chen's great-aunt, one of Earth's most senior military officers. Around the table sat the most powerful humans in the galaxy, but for the first time in centuries they looked afraid. 95,000 civilians. Admiral Wei's voice was barely above a whisper. Executed for refusing to starve. The room was silent. Everyone had seen the recordings. The Empire had made sure of that. They wanted humans to know what happened when they resisted. "The Galactic Empire thinks we are weak." Admiral Wei stood up slowly. "They think we are just farmers and traders. They think we forgot how to fight." She walked to an ancient vault built into the wall, her hand pressed against a scanner that had not been used in 3 centuries. Ancient locks clicked open. Inside were documents that most humans believed were myths. "They want to see what happens when you corner a human?" Admiral Wei pulled out a folder marked with warning symbols. "Let's show them what our ancestors built in the shadows." The seals on the American doctrine were broken for the first time since Earth's bloodiest wars. Orders went out to facilities hidden deep in mountains and ocean trenches, places where humanity's darkest military secrets slept in the cold. The Empire had just woken up something they did not understand, something that had been waiting for 300 years to show the galaxy why humans were once the most feared warriors in their own solar system. The Boogeymen were coming. The Colorado Mountains had kept their secrets for 300 years. Deep beneath the rock and snow, facilities that existed on no public maps received their first signals since the end of Earth's last Great War. Ancient computers woke from their long sleep. Machines that had waited centuries for this moment began to hum with power. In the deepest chamber, rows of metal cylinders lined the walls. Each one contained a human body preserved in perfect condition. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the best Earth had ever produced, volunteers from humanity's most violent period. Men and women who had agreed to sleep until their planet needed them most. The first cylinder opened with a soft hiss of escaping gas. Inside lay Commander Jake Morrison, formerly of the United States Navy SEALs. The last thing he remembered was lying in a hospital bed, dying of radiation poisoning from a mission gone wrong. The doctors had given him a choice: death in 6 months, or experimental preservation until medical science could save him. Jake's eyes opened slowly. The chamber was filled with soft blue light. His body felt strange, different, stronger than it had been in years. The radiation damage was gone. Whatever they had done to him during the long sleep, it had worked. "Welcome back, Commander," a voice spoke from the chamber walls. "You have been asleep for 312 years. Earth needs you." More cylinders were opening around the room. Jake sat up and watched his old team wake from their centuries of sleep. Sarah Ghost Williams from Delta Force, Marcus Tank Rodriguez from Marine Force Recon, Rebecca Wire Thompson from CIA Special Operations, 47 of the deadliest humans who had ever lived. They had all been dying when they went to sleep. Cancer, radiation poisoning, injuries that 21st century medicine could not heal. Now they were perfect again, better than they had ever been. Status report. Jake's voice was rough from the long sleep, but his training kicked in immediately. The computer began to speak. It told them about the centuries they had missed, how humanity had spread to the stars, how they had become peaceful farmers and traders, how the Galactic Empire had grown to rule most of the galaxy, and how 95,000 humans had just been murdered for refusing to starve. Jake's team listened in silence. They had been soldiers in Earth's bloodiest era, when nations fought with nuclear weapons and biological warfare. They understood violence in ways that modern humans had forgotten. What the Empire had done to New Geneva was not war. It was slaughter. "Mission parameters?" Sarah asked. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "Eliminate the threat to human colonies," the computer replied. "Use any methods necessary. No restrictions on weapons or tactics. The American doctrine is now in full effect." The team smiled. They remembered the American doctrine. It was simple. When someone threatens your people, you make them regret it so much that no one else ever tries the same thing. While the Boogeymen prepared for war, the Galactic Empire was learning about Earth's reaction to the New Geneva massacre. Imperial intelligence ships watched Earth's solar system from a safe distance. What they saw confused them. Admiral Vextar studied the energy readings from his flagship. Earth's military installations were drawing massive amounts of power. Ships were moving between the planet and its outer moons, but the humans were not building an attack fleet. They were doing something else entirely. "What are they preparing?" Vextar asked his science officer. "Unknown, Admiral." The Zalani scientist's tentacles waved nervously. "The energy patterns do not match any known human technology. Some readings suggest they are accessing facilities that predate their space colonization." Vextar laughed. "Primitive human desperation. They think their ancient weapons can threaten the Empire." But his science officer was not convinced. The numbers did not make sense. Earth was using more power than some entire star systems. Whatever they were preparing, it was massive. On the imperial capital world of Draxos Prime, Emperor Thaxon received reports of the human activity. He was a massive creature, 12 feet tall with armored skin and 4 powerful arms. His species had ruled the galaxy for 2,000 years through superior technology and ruthless efficiency. "The humans are mobilizing," his military advisor reported. "Our spies suggest they are preparing some kind of response to New Geneva." Emperor Thaxon's laugh shook the throne room. "Let them come. We will destroy their pathetic fleets and execute another 1,000,000 of their kind. Perhaps then they will learn proper respect for their betters." The Emperor decided to make an example of Earth itself. He ordered the 5th and 7th Imperial fleets to the human home system, 200 ships carrying enough firepower to shatter planets. When the humans saw that force, they would surrender immediately. The Imperial fleets arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system 3 days later. They were the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Their weapons could destroy entire civilizations. Their shields could withstand the heat of stars. No enemy had ever survived their attack. Admiral Korthax commanded the combined fleets from his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds. He sent a message toward Earth, confident that the humans would surrender immediately. "Humans of the Sol System," his voice carried across space, "you are commanded to surrender unconditionally to the Galactic Empire, submit to complete Imperial authority, or face the same fate as New Geneva. You have 24 hours to comply." The response came faster than expected. A single transmission from Earth broadcast on all frequencies so every ship in both fleets could hear it. "Message received. Response incoming." Admiral Korthax frowned. The human message was calm, almost casual. There was no fear in it, no desperation, just quiet confidence that sent an unexpected chill down his spine. On Earth, Jake Morrison stood in the military command center with his awakened team. They wore black uniforms with no insignia, no identifying marks. They carried weapons that looked simple but were deadlier than anything in the Empire's arsenal. Each soldier was a perfect killing machine, enhanced by 3 centuries of medical science. "Orders, sir?" Sarah asked. Jake looked at the display showing the Imperial fleets. 200 ships full of enemies who thought humans were weak. Creatures who had murdered children for wanting to eat. They were about to learn why Earth's warriors had once been the most feared fighters in their own system. "Make them afraid," Jake said simply. "Show them what happens when you kill our families." The team nodded and headed for their transport ships, small vessels that could bend space and time, invisible to any known sensors. They would not attack the Imperial fleets directly. That would be too quick, too merciful. Instead, they would hunt the Empire's leaders across the galaxy. One by one, the creatures responsible for New Geneva would learn what it felt like to be prey. The Boogeymen were going to war, and this time there would be no rules of engagement. The Empire had wanted to see humanity's response to genocide. They were about to get exactly what they asked for. Admiral Kethmore was the first to die, though it took the Empire 3 days to realize he was dead. The Vorthak Admiral commanded the garrison on Zarian Prime, an important military world near the Galactic Center. He had been one of the officers who approved the New Geneva massacre. His name was on Jake Morrison's list. Kethmore woke on the 4th day after the Imperial fleets had surrounded Earth. He felt strange, like something was watching him. His private quarters were on the top floor of the military command center. 50 guards protected the building. Motion sensors covered every hallway. No enemy could possibly reach him here. But when Kethmore tried to get out of bed, his 4 legs would not move. He looked down and saw his security detail arranged around his room. All 12 guards were dead. No wounds, no signs of struggle. They looked like they had simply fallen asleep and never woken up. Carved into the wall above his bed were human numbers. 95,000. We're counting. Kethmore tried to scream, but no sound came out. His throat had been cut so precisely that he felt no pain. He bled to death in minutes. Never understanding how human soldiers had passed through 50 guards and military sensors without leaving a trace. The base security found his body 3 days later when he missed an important military meeting. The guards had been killed with weapons the Empire had never seen. Microscopic needles that stopped hearts instantly. Gases that made victims simply fall asleep forever. But the most frightening thing was the message. The humans were counting. They knew exactly how many people had died at New Geneva, and they were coming for everyone responsible. On 12 other worlds, similar scenes played out over the next week. Imperial officers and administrators who had supported the New Geneva operation began dying in impossible ways. Colonel Vexhan was found in his sealed bunker, dead of apparent fear with his eyes still open. General Thoklar died in his sleep, though his body showed signs of being scared to death. Each death scene carried the same message: human numbers carved into walls, sometimes written in the victim's own blood. The count was always the same: 95,000 people who demanded justice. The Empire's intelligence services worked frantically to understand what was happening. Their best scientists studied the crime scenes. Their security experts reviewed all sensor data, but there were no signs of how the humans had reached their targets. Ghost soldiers, Intelligence Director Zalketh reported to Emperor Thaxon. They appear, kill their targets, and vanish without any trace. Our sensors detect nothing. Our guards see nothing. It's as if they can walk through solid matter. Emperor Thaxon's rage shook the palace on Draxos Prime. Find them! Use every ship, every soldier, every weapon in the Empire. I want these human terrorists destroyed. But the Boogeymen were not terrorists. They were hunters, and they had 300 years of advanced human technology at their disposal. Their ships could bend space-time itself, making them invisible to any sensors the Empire possessed. Their weapons used principles of physics that the Empire had never discovered. More importantly, they understood something about warfare that the Empire had forgotten. Fear was more powerful than any weapon. Jake Morrison's team struck at the Empire's infrastructure next. Supply depots that fed the Imperial fleets simply exploded, taking entire space stations with them. Communications relays that connected the Empire's far-flung territories went silent one by one. Administrative centers, where Imperial bureaucrats planned their next atrocities, became smoking ruins. The attacks were perfectly coordinated across hundreds of light years. Jake's team moved like ghosts through Imperial space, striking targets that should have been impossible to reach. They hit 12 worlds in one day, then vanished before Imperial reinforcements could respond. On the industrial world of Corvin 5, Sarah Williams infiltrated the main weapons factory. The facility produced the energy rifles used by Imperial soldiers. It employed 50,000 workers and was protected by an entire army division. Sarah walked through their defenses like they did not exist. Her stealth suit made her invisible to all sensors. Her movement was so quiet that she could stand next to a guard, and he would never know she was there. She did not destroy the factory. Instead, she reprogrammed every weapon on the production line. Now, when Imperial soldiers tried to use them, the rifles would display images from the New Geneva massacre instead of firing. Every soldier in the Empire would see the faces of the children they had murdered. The psychological effect was devastating. Imperial troops began refusing to use their weapons. Some suffered mental breakdowns when they saw the images of dead human families. Others deserted their posts and tried to hide from what they thought were vengeful human spirits. The Empire tried to strike back by attacking more human colonies. They destroyed 3 farming settlements and executed 50,000 more civilians. But this only made the situation worse. Each death was added to the count that appeared at every attack site. Now the message read, 145,000. We're still counting. Jake Morrison received the updated casualty reports while preparing his next mission. His team was aboard their stealth ship studying the Imperial Palace on Draxos Prime. Emperor Thaxon himself lived there, protected by 10,000 guards and the most advanced defenses in the galaxy. They killed 50,000 more people, Sarah reported. Families who never hurt anyone. Jake's expression did not change, but his team could feel the cold anger radiating from him. They had been soldiers in Earth's bloodiest era, but they had always fought to protect the innocent. What the Empire was doing was not war. It was pure evil. New target priority, Jake announced. We're going after the Emperor himself. The team smiled. They had been waiting for this order. Emperor Thaxon thought his palace was unreachable. He was about to learn that there was nowhere in the galaxy where human vengeance could not find him. Meanwhile, Imperial intelligence was beginning to understand the scope of what they faced. The attacks were not random. Every target had been carefully chosen to maximize psychological impact. The humans were not trying to conquer the Empire. They were trying to destroy it from within. They're using our own systems against us, Intelligence Director Zalketh reported to the Imperial War Council. Our computers are showing images from New Geneva instead of operational data. Our navigation systems are leading ships to human territories instead of their intended destinations. Even our food dispensers are malfunctioning. What the Empire did not understand was that Jake Morrison's team included specialists in electronic warfare. Rebecca Thompson had been hacking computer systems before the Empire even existed. Now she had 300 years of advanced technology at her disposal. She had infiltrated the Empire's main communication networks and planted viruses that would spread across their entire civilization. Every computer screen in Imperial space would eventually show images of the New Geneva massacre. Every communication device would play the screams of dying human children. The Empire's member species began to notice the changes. The Zalani Trading Consortium reported that their ships were experiencing strange malfunctions. The Corvin military found their weapon systems displaying human faces instead of targeting data. Even civilian populations were seeing the images from New Geneva on their entertainment screens. Fear began to spread through the Empire faster than any disease. Species that had served the Empire for thousands of years started questioning their loyalty. If the humans could reach anyone, anywhere, then no one was safe from their vengeance. Some imperial worlds quietly began negotiating with human representatives, offering information about military operations in exchange for protection from the Boogeymen. The Empire's alliance was breaking apart from within, exactly as Jake Morrison had planned. But the humans were not finished. The real target was still alive, still giving orders from his palace on Draxos Prime. Emperor Thaxon had ordered the deaths of 145,000 innocent people. Soon he would meet the soldiers who had come to collect payment for those lives. The hunt was just beginning. The Zalani merchant ship, Prophet's Dream, was 3 days out from the imperial world of Nexus 7 when their engines died. Captain Vorthan studied his instruments with growing fear. The power systems were working perfectly. The engines showed no damage, but the ship was completely dead in space, millions of miles from the nearest help. "Captain," his navigator's voice shook with terror. "Something is moving outside the ship." Vorthan looked through the viewing port and saw nothing but empty space. Then the lights inside his ship began to flicker. When they came back on, a human soldier stood in the middle of the bridge. The figure wore black armor that seemed to absorb light. Its face was hidden behind a helmet that reflected the terrified expressions of the Zalani crew. It said nothing, just stood there like death itself had come to visit. "Please," Captain Vorthan whispered, "we are just merchants. We have done nothing wrong." The human soldier finally spoke. Its voice came from everywhere at once, as if the ship itself was talking. "You carry Imperial weapons to worlds where they kill human children. You profit from genocide." The soldier gestured toward the cargo hold. Captain Vorthan knew what was stored there. Energy rifles, plasma cannons, and chemical weapons ordered by the Imperial military. Weapons that would be used to massacre more human colonies. "We had no choice," Vorthan pleaded. "The Empire forces us to carry their cargo. Please, we are not soldiers. We do not fight." The human soldier tilted its head like it was considering this argument. Then it spoke again, and this time its voice carried the weight of 145,000 dead souls. "Tell your people that Earth remembers. Tell them that serving the Empire makes you our enemy. Tell them that nowhere in space is safe for those who help our killers." The figure vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. The ship's engines came back online, but when Captain Vorthan checked his cargo hold, every weapon had been replaced with photographs. Images of human families who had died in Imperial attacks, children who would never grow up, parents who would never see their young ones again. The Prophet's Dream limped back to Zalani space, carrying the most terrifying cargo in its history. Within days, every member of the Zalani Trading Consortium had seen the images. Within weeks, they had quietly withdrawn from all Imperial contracts. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The humans were not just attacking the Empire anymore. They were targeting everyone who helped the Empire function. Supply ships, mercenary companies, weapons dealers, and even civilian contractors found themselves visited by the Boogeymen. Marcus Rodriguez led a team that specialized in these psychological operations. His soldiers would board ships without triggering any alarms. They would replace cargo with images from New Geneva. They would leave crews alive but traumatized, spreading stories of human demons who could walk through walls and read minds. The effect was devastating. The Empire's economy began to collapse as suppliers refused to work with them. Mercenary units that had fought for imperial pay for centuries suddenly found other employment. Even species that had been conquered by the Empire started secretly helping the humans. On the fortress world of Keth Prime, Colonel Sarah Williams infiltrated the main military academy. This was where the Empire trained its future officers. Thousands of young aliens studied the art of war in massive stone buildings that had stood for 1,000 years. Sarah did not kill anyone at the academy. Instead, she hacked into their educational systems and replaced every lesson with testimonies from New Geneva survivors. Students who came to class expecting to learn military tactics instead watched recordings of human children begging for their lives. The psychological impact was immediate. Cadets who had dreamed of serving the Empire began deserting in massive numbers. Others suffered mental breakdowns and had to be hospitalized. Within a month, the academy was forced to close because they no longer had enough students. But the humans' most devastating weapon was their ability to turn the Empire's own infrastructure against itself. Rebecca Thompson had spent weeks infiltrating the central computer networks that controlled Imperial society. Now she activated viruses that had been sleeping in their systems like time bombs. Across the Empire, artificial intelligences began to malfunction in terrifying ways. Medical computers and hospitals started displaying images from human massacres instead of patient records. Entertainment systems played the screams of dying families instead of music. Even children's educational programs were replaced with footage from New Geneva. The psychological warfare reached its peak when the humans infiltrated the Empire's propaganda networks. Imperial citizens who turned on their televisions expecting to see news about military victories instead saw endless footage of their own military murdering human children. The Empire's own communication systems were broadcasting evidence of their war crimes. Emperor Thaxon's rage had reached levels that worried even his closest advisors. He had ordered the execution of 12 intelligence directors who failed to stop the human infiltrations. His palace guards were dying of stress-related illnesses. Some had even committed suicide rather than face the possibility of being visited by human soldiers. "How many of our worlds have been contacted by these terrorists?" the Emperor demanded during an emergency war council. 47 worlds have reported human infiltrations, Admiral Zexkar replied nervously. "Our member species are losing faith in our ability to protect them. The Corvan Confederation has threatened to leave the Empire unless we solve this problem." Emperor Thaxon's 4 arms slammed against the council table hard enough to crack the ancient stone. "Then we will show them Imperial strength. Order our fleets to destroy 10 human worlds. Execute every person on them. These ghosts cannot protect everyone at once." But Admiral Zexkar hesitated. The Empire's fleets were already stretched thin trying to protect their most important worlds. More troubling, several ship crews had reported seeing human faces in their computer screens, hearing human voices in their communication systems. Some vessels had even been found drifting in space with their crews catatonic, staring at walls that showed images from New Geneva. The humans had done something that no enemy in galactic history had accomplished. They had made the Empire afraid of its own technology. On the mining world of Dracos 4, an entire Imperial garrison surrendered to a single human soldier who simply walked into their base and asked them to lay down their weapons. The garrison commander later reported that the human had somehow shown him what would happen to his family if he refused. No threats were made, no violence was used. The soldier simply made it clear that resistance was futile. The Empire's member species took note of these bloodless surrenders. If even Imperial military units were giving up without a fight, what hope did civilian populations have? Better to negotiate with Earth while negotiation was still possible. Secret communications began flowing between human representatives and Imperial member worlds. The Talnari Federation offered to provide intelligence about Imperial fleet movements in exchange for protection from the Boogeymen. The Hyrix colony worlds promised to stop supplying the Empire with raw materials if Earth would guarantee their safety. Jake Morrison received these diplomatic overtures while planning the final phase of his mission. His team was aboard their stealth ship, studying the Imperial Palace on Draxos Prime. Emperor Thaxon's private chambers were protected by energy shields that could stop a nuclear explosion. Guard towers surrounded the building in overlapping fields of fire. Motion sensors covered every approach. None of it mattered. The humans had technology that the Empire could not even comprehend. Intelligence reports that the Emperor has not left his private quarters in 6 days, Sarah Williams reported. He's becoming increasingly paranoid, ordering the execution of anyone who brings him bad news. Jake nodded. Perfect. Fear was making their target irrational, isolated from his own advisors. That would make the final confrontation much easier. New priority targets, Jake announced to his team. The Emperor's personal staff, his food tasters, his bodyguards, his advisors. Everyone who has access to his quarters. I want him completely alone when we finally visit him. Rebecca Thompson smiled as she accessed the Imperial Palace computer systems. Sir, I've already started. The Emperor's daily schedule now includes appointments with every person who died at New Geneva. His food synthesizers are programmed to make everything taste like ash. His mirrors show reflection of dead human children instead of his own face. The team prepared for their final mission while the Empire crumbled around them. Imperial fleets were deserting. Member worlds were declaring independence. The greatest military power in galactic history was being destroyed not by superior technology or overwhelming force, but by simple, systematic terror. Emperor Thaxon sat alone in his chamber, surrounded by the bodies of advisors who could no longer handle the psychological pressure. His 4 hands shook as he tried to eat food that tasted like death. His reflection in the mirror showed him the faces of human children he had ordered killed. He could hear footsteps in the corridor outside, even though his guards had been dead for hours. Human voices whispered his name through the walls. The lights flickered in patterns that spelled out the number of people who had died because of his orders. The hunt was almost over. Emperor Thaxon had not slept in 7 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of human children staring at him with empty, accusing eyes. His food tasted like ash. Water burned his throat. Even the air in his private chambers seemed poisoned with the smell of death. The Imperial Palace was silent now. His guards had stopped reporting for duty after finding their fellow soldiers dead in impossible circumstances. His advisors had either been killed by human infiltrators or had committed suicide rather than face them. The Emperor of the greatest military power in galactic history sat alone in his throne room, surrounded by corpses and shadows. Outside his windows, the capital city of Draxos Prime was in chaos. Imperial fleets had abandoned their posts and fled to neutral space. Government buildings stood empty as officials disappeared in the night. Even civilian populations were rioting, demanding that their leaders surrender to Earth before the human demons came for them too. Thaxon's 4 hands shook as he tried to access his communication systems. Every screen in the palace showed the same thing. Images from New Geneva played on an endless loop, accompanied by numbers that counted every human death. 145,000 people who demanded justice. Computer, Thaxon's voice cracked with exhaustion and fear. Connect me to Admiral Vextar's flagship. The screen flickered, then displayed a message in simple human text. Admiral Vextar is dead. They are all dead. You are alone. The Emperor staggered backward from the console. His own computers had been compromised. Nothing in his empire was safe from human infiltration. He was trapped in a palace that had become his tomb, waiting for ghosts to come and collect their payment. A sound echoed through the throne room. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, getting closer, but there was no one in the corridor outside. The motion sensors showed nothing. The security cameras detected no movement, yet the footsteps continued, each one like a hammer blow against Thaxon's sanity. The massive doors to the throne room were sealed shut, locked with energy barriers that could stop an army. But as Thaxon watched in horror, they began to open anyway. No alarms sounded, no security systems activated. The doors simply slid apart like they were obeying some invisible command. 4 figures walked into the throne room like death itself had come to visit. They wore black armor that seemed to absorb light, making them appear as dark shadows against the palace walls. Their faces were hidden behind helmets that reflected the Emperor's terrified expression. They moved without sound, their feet barely touching the floor. Thaxon recognized them immediately. These were the Boogeymen, the human soldiers who had destroyed his empire from within. The creatures that his intelligence services claimed were myths, legends told to frighten children. They stood before him now as real as his own fear. The figure in front removed his helmet, revealing a face that looked human, but somehow wrong. The eyes held depths of experience that no living being should possess. The expression was calm, patient, like a predator that had finally cornered its prey after a long hunt. "Emperor Thaxon," Jake Morrison's voice carried the weight of 145,000 dead souls. "We need to talk." Thaxon tried to speak, but found his voice had abandoned him. The human soldier gestured to the corpses scattered around the throne room, the bodies of advisors who had died of fear and stress. "Your empire is finished," Jake continued conversationally. "Your fleets have surrendered or fled. Your member worlds have declared independence. Your own people are hunting down anyone who served you. In 6 months, you have gone from ruling half the galaxy to sitting alone in an empty palace." The Emperor finally found his voice. "What do you want? Money? Territory? I can give you entire star systems." Jake's smile was colder than the vacuum of space. "We already have what we want. Your empire is dead. Your military is scattered. Your allies have abandoned you. The Galactic Empire will never threaten human lives again." "Then kill me," Thaxon whispered. "If you came here for revenge, take it." But Jake shook his head slowly. "Death would be mercy. You killed 145,000 innocent people, men, women, children who never hurt anyone. They died because you wanted to show the galaxy how powerful you were." The human soldier gestured, and the walls of the throne room began displaying images. Not the massacre footage that had been playing throughout the Empire, but pictures of the victims before they died. Families celebrating birthdays, children playing in wheat fields, elderly couples holding hands as they watched the sunset over New Geneva. "These people had names," Jake continued. "They had hopes and dreams. They loved each other and wanted to build a better future for their children. You erased all of that because they refused to starve for your empire." Thaxon stared at the images, seeing human faces for the first time as individuals rather than numbers in a report. The weight of what he had done finally hit him like a physical blow. These were not just casualties of war. They were people, real people who had died because of his orders. "You get to live with what you've done." Jake's voice was pitiless. "You get to see those faces every day for the rest of your very long life. You get to remember that you destroyed the greatest empire in galactic history because you were too proud to let humans keep enough food to survive." The human soldiers turned to leave, their mission complete. But Jake paused at the doorway and looked back at the broken Emperor. "Oh, and Thaxon, if any of your remaining forces try to hurt humans again, we'll come back. Next time, we won't be so merciful." The Boogeymen vanished as silently as they had arrived, leaving Emperor Thaxon alone with the images of his victims and the ruins of everything he had built. 6 months later, representatives from across the galaxy gathered on the human world of New Terra to sign the Terran Accords. The document established a new galactic government based on principles that would have seemed impossible before the Empire's fall. No species could rule over another. All conflicts must be resolved peacefully, and genocide would be met with immediate intervention by Earth's peacekeepers. Admiral Chen Wei stood at the podium, addressing delegates from 100 different worlds. Behind her, the flags of former imperial territories flew alongside the banner of United Earth. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the price of threatening humanity. The Empire fell because it forgot the most important rule of galactic civilization, Admiral Wei announced to the assembled delegates. There are some lines that cannot be crossed, some actions that cannot be forgiven. Today we establish a new order based on respect for all life. The Boogeymen were not present at the ceremony. They had returned to their sleep in the Colorado mountains, waiting in case they were needed again. But every species in the galaxy knew they were there. The weapons that had destroyed the Empire in 6 months without firing a shot at a single military target. On the memorial world of New Geneva, now rebuilt as a testament to those who had died, children played in the same wheat fields where the massacre had taken place. The colony was home to families from dozens of species, all living together in the peace that their sacrifice had made possible. A simple monument stood in the center of the settlement. It bore the names of the 145,000 people who had died in imperial attacks, along with a message in every galactic language, in memory of those who died for refusing to bow to tyranny. Their sacrifice reminds us that freedom is never free, and that good people must sometimes do terrible things to protect the innocent. At the bottom of the monument, in smaller text that few visitors noticed, was another message written in ancient English. Here sleep humanity's guardians. Wake them at your peril. The galaxy had peace now, enforced not by fleets of warships, but by the knowledge of what would happen to those who broke it. The American Boogeymen had taught a lesson that would be remembered for thousands of years. Humans might be peaceful farmers and traders most of the time, but they remembered how to be monsters when their families were threatened. Emperor Thaxon lived for another 40 years. Alone in his empty palace, haunted by the faces of the people he had killed. He died quietly in his sleep, and when his body was found, his face bore an expression of relief. The last words he had written were found on his desk. Forgive me. I did not understand what I was destroying. The Galactic Empire was buried with him, its tombstone carved with the number of innocent lives it had cost. Never again would one species try to rule the galaxy through fear and violence. The universe had learned that humanity's capacity for both compassion and vengeance made them the perfect guardians of galactic peace. In the deep chambers beneath the Colorado mountains, the Boogeymen slept peacefully in their metal cylinders. They had done what they were created to do: protect their people and ensure that the galaxy would never forget the cost of human blood. The wheat still grew on New Geneva, golden and beautiful under an alien sun. Children still played in the fields, their laughter carrying on winds that had once been filled with screams. And somewhere in the distance, watching over them all, the spirits of 145,000 martyrs finally rested in peace, knowing that their sacrifice had made the galaxy a safer place for everyone. The hunt was over. Justice had been served, and humanity could finally return to building a better future among the stars, protected by guardians who would wake only when called upon to remind the universe why peace was always the better choice.